7:15, 1 minute.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. O Lord, lead us from untruth to truth. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from immortality. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. So, very good evening to all of you. At the outset, I accord a warm welcome to the respected faith leaders of all the faiths present over here in this Interfaith Dialogue. Before we start this, I'll just give a brief introduction of our order. The Vedanta Society of Greater Houston is a branch center of the worldwide Ramakrishna Math and Ramakrishna Mission, having its headquarters at Belur Math near Kolkata in India, and a total of 269 branch centers, out of which 202 centers are in India. 15 branches of the order are in the United States of America. Apart from these 15 branches, there are another about a dozen of branches which are the sub-centers of these branches, and many more which are run by a group of devotees. And put together, that may be another couple of dozens. So the Ramakrishna Math and Ramakrishna Mission is a worldwide, non-political and non-sectarian spiritual organization which has been engaged in various forms of humanitarian and social service activities for over a century. The order set in motion a non-sectarian and universal spiritual movement which has been silently but effectively working for more than 100 years to catalyze the spiritual regeneration of humanity. The Ramakrishna order does not believe in conversion, nor does it indulge in the occult or the sensational. The order places utmost importance on personal spiritual unfoldment and selfless service. Inspired by the idea of the harmony of all faiths, it centers, encourage adherents of different faiths to meet in a spirit of friendship and mutual appreciation, and to learn from one another without having to give up one's faith. So, continuing with our tradition to encourage dialogue between different faiths, we have organized this Interfaith Dialogue today with a specific focus on presenting faith and spiritual beliefs to the modern generation. A right understanding of the respective faith and spiritual belief by the modern generation is of utmost importance, as they are the ones who will shape the future of the world, the future of humanity. The world today, as it were, is sitting on a tip of a volcano, ready to erupt anytime. Violence and killing in the name of religion has become rampant. Religion, which should have been a subtle force to raise a human being from the level of humanity to the level of divinity, alas, has become a tool which is wreaking havoc in the entire world. Swami Vivekananda in the Chicago Parliament of Religion said in his inaugural address, sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant fanaticism have long possessed this beautiful earth. They have filled the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilizations, and sent the whole nations into despair. Had it not for these horrible demons, human society would have been far more advanced than it is now. These words were spoken by Swami Vivekananda in 1893, and how true they hold today. Now, what is the solution? The solution is to understand religion in the correct perspective. In the same Parliament of Religions, Swami Vivekananda shared with the Western audience one beautiful passage from the Shiva Mahimna Stotram, which says, Ruchinam Vaichitriat Drijukutila Nanapathajusham Rinameka Gamyastamasi Poyashamornava Eva. As the different streams having their sources at different places, yet all mingle their water in the sea. So, O Lord, the different paths which men take through different tendencies, various though they appear, crooked or straight, all lead to Thee. So, until and unless we have a universal approach to religion and have a certain degree of tolerance and acceptance, it's not just passive tolerance, I tolerate you, not that, but I accept that your faith, your religion also is equally a path to reach the highest. Till that spirit comes, it's difficult to find an universal religion. So I welcome all of you and conclude my introductory address by sharing with you this wonderful final address of Swamiji at the Chicago Parliament, which is very, very relevant in the today's world, where Swamiji said, much has been said of the common grounds of religious unity. I am not going just now to venture my own theory, but if anyone here hopes that this unity will come by the triumph of any one of the religions and the destruction of others, to him I say, brother, yours is an impossible hope. Do I wish that the Christians would become Hindus? God forbid. Do I wish that the Hindus or Muslims would become Buddhists? God forbid. The seed is put in the ground, and the air, water, and earth are placed around it. Does the seed become the air, the water, or the earth? No, it grows into a plant. Similar is the case with religion. A Hindu is not to become a Muslim or a Christian. Neither a Christian is to become a Hindu or a Muslim. But each must assimilate the spirit of others and yet preserve their own individuality and grow according to their own law of growth. Holiness, purity, and charity are not the exclusive possessions of any religion in the world. And every religion has produced men and women of the most exalted character. In the face of this evidence, if anybody dreams of the exclusive survival of his own religion and the destruction of others, I pity him from the bottom of my heart and point out to him that very soon, upon the banner of every religion, will be written in spite of resistance, help and not fight, assimilation and not destruction, harmony and peace and not dissension. So let us be optimistic and let us pray to the Lord that sooner than later good sense should prevail and we understand the true purport of religion and the world becomes a safe place to live in. So now we start our interfaith dialogue. I hand over the mic to Arati to do the moderation.
Good evening, everyone. Firstly, thank you all for joining us this evening. The topic, again, for today is presenting faith and spiritual beliefs to the modern generation. And before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping guidelines for tonight. Firstly, I request the audience members to please keep your questions for the general question and answer session. Please turn off your cell phones so we don't have any disturbances during the dialogue, and just a friendly reminder that the bathrooms are outside in the hallway. I would also like to take the time to express gratitude to our speakers for their participation tonight. Speakers, you will have a total of 12 minutes to answer 2 general questions. We have someone that will be keeping the time for us tonight. So after 11 minutes, there will be an initial warning. and then a second warning, just letting you know that there's 30 more seconds, and then the last warning at 12 minutes. And after all the speakers have finished answering the 2 questions, you will all have 10 minutes for a dialogue amongst yourselves. And to discuss our topic for today, again, presenting faith and spiritual beliefs to the modern generation. And after that, we will open the floor to the audience for the general question and answer session. So our first speaker for today is Reverend Dr. Colin Bosson. Reverend Dr. Colin Bosson presently serves as a senior minister of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston. A scholar as well as a religious leader and activist, he earned a PhD in American Studies and AM in History from Harvard University. He's the author of more than 36 published essays, articles, and poems, and is presently working on 2 books, one on populism and religion in the United States, and the other on contemporary Unitarian Universalist theology. So the first question is, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what drew you to become a faith leader?
Well, thank you. And I want to thank the brother there for offering those beautiful words. I really feel like after that, I shouldn't have anything to say. They were really just magnificent. So thank you so much for that. Unitarian Universalism is often a religion that people come to as adults rather than are raised in, but I'm sort of an unusual case in that I was raised Unitarian Universalist. And I think I'll answer the question. I think I want to say a few words about Unitarian Universalism because I don't know about the rest of the faith leaders here, but I find myself pretty unfamiliar with like a lot of your traditions, and I suspect you might be somewhat unfamiliar with mine. So one of the very important aspects of Unitarian Universalism is its commitment to social service and to social justice. It's a very long-standing tradition in terms of that. And as a young adult, I was very engaged in social justice movements and in the way in which the church in particular was involved in social justice efforts. And so I trained initially as a physicist and worked as a database architect and sort of felt like that wasn't really doing much to make the world a better place and felt like, well, I need to do something that is more meaningful to me and more meaningful to the world. And so in my early 20s, I decided to enter the ministry rather than continue along the path of database architecture. Let me say a few words about Unitarian Universalism in general. So it's not a tradition that I think a lot of people are familiar with, although we have a mutual friend, V.B. Kanandu, was in dialogue with Unitarian Universalists back in the 19th century. It is a tradition that is what's called a dissenting tradition, which means that it's a tradition that arose protesting kind of the mainstream of Christianity in Europe, particularly over questions of salvation and the nature of God. So over the question of salvation, a lot of traditional Christian practices suggest that only some people will eventually be unified with the divine, right? Some people go to heaven, some people go to hell. But the Universalist tradition rejected that idea and said that everybody in the end will be unified with the divine. The Unitarian tradition preached the unity of God as opposed to the division of God into 3 entities, which is the sort of traditional Christian belief. And so because of that, they proclaimed the humanity of Jesus. They said that Jesus is somebody who's a great exemplar who we can follow and learn to be like, but is not uniquely the Son of God, right? Everybody is the Son of God or child of God. Everybody has the spark of divine within them. The purpose of religion is to help us grow in the likeness of God, would be the sort of classical expression of that. And so, you can see the sort of resonance with Vivekananda and other traditions outside of kind of Western consciousness. And and I think one other thing to say about it is that it's, I think, often thought of as like a newer tradition, but it's actually one of the oldest sort of Christian dissenting traditions, if not the oldest. So our congregations in Europe go back to the 1560s, and here in the United States, actually, Unitarian Universalist congregations in the Northeast are the oldest congregations in the country. So the Congregation of the Pilgrims, which goes to 1606, is a Unitarian Universalist congregation. The First Church in Boston, 1620. The First Church in Salem, 1628. I could have a sort of long, history about that. That would perhaps be interesting, perhaps not. But I think that the main point I'm trying to sort of just express there is that we're not a new tradition, and that we have, since our sort of inception, preached universalism and sort of this idea that we make the road by walking. We learn to understand the divine through our actions and our practices. And I guess in terms of my personal background, another thing that is true about Unitarian Universalism is it is often what's called a hybrid religion. It sort of emerges at the intersection of different religious traditions. So in Europe, the places where the Unitarians come to believe in the humanity of Jesus come out of interfaith dialogue between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Right? They said that we are all children of the same God. So like we would have peace if we came to recognize that we were all children of the same God and stopped fighting between the Jews and the Muslims and the Christians over whose God is the correct God. And in my own personal background, my mother comes from a Christian background. My father comes from a Jewish background. And so when they got together, they raised my brother and I in the Unitarian Universalist tradition. So that's also sort of how I ended up to being a Unitarian Universalist minister, whatever that spiritual calling that I had that was a calling towards religious leadership came because of that sort of interfaith marriage.
Awesome. And the second question for tonight is, how does your faith present spiritual beliefs to the modern generation?
Yes, I've been thinking about this question a little bit. I'm trying to figure out what is meant by the question, the modern generation. Because I feel like, is that supposed to mean people under the age of 40? Is that supposed to mean people who are sort of living today? I mean, it's a very sort of capacious and open, thought. So what I would say is that Unitarian Universalists do not focus on salvation in the next world. We focus on salvation in this world, right? So whatever good there is going to be found in the next world, we don't know about, but we do know, or we cannot agree about necessarily, right? Like you might have one understanding of what salvation might look like, and I might have another, and you might have another, but we can agree on some pretty basic things here in this world that we all need and that will make the world better, right? Things like friendship and love and making sure that everybody has clean air and clean water and housing. And so our religious belief is really very oriented towards practice and seeking salvation in this world, seeking to make the world a better place, building a more beautiful world than the one we live in today. So I think that in terms of how does that connect to the modern generation, however that is understood, well, every generation or set of generations is going to have its particular set of problems, which it is blessed to have to figure out. And so we focus on trying to figure out how to solve those challenges together, right? So if you were to come to my congregation on a Sunday, you might hear a sermon about how we need to engage in the religious practice of building a democratic community, or we need to engage in sort of thinking about climate justice as a religious struggle. Yeah, so I think there's that, which means that for Unitarian Universalists, the engagement with the modern generation is always something that we're doing, and is always shifting based on what the struggles of the hour are, which is why Unitarian Universalists are very much always involved in struggles for civil rights, LGBTQ rights. It's why Unitarian Universalists have had the first transgender, or some of the first transgender ministers, some of the first queer ministers, some of the first women ministers, so on and so forth over the years, because whatever the sort of struggle of the modern generation is, we invite those people into our community. So if the question is also, how do we engage people like through our programs and things like that? That is an always evolving and interesting question, right? Because like technology changes and the pandemic changed things, and what it means to be a religious community changed things. Like we have this lovely live stream going on. I have no idea how many people are participating in that, but for us, we get about 200 and some people on a Sunday morning in person, and then another 200 and some people on a Sunday morning who join us online, right? And so like what the meaning of being a religious community is changing, because 10 years ago, it was just the people who were there in the room with me. Now the religious community has to include people who are joining us online, and like what their needs are, and how do we imagine their needs, and how do they imagine themselves as part of our community. So I think technology, as we all know, is changing everything. And I think that the other thing I would say is that figuring out how to serve people who are spiritual but not religious. Is that my 12 minutes, or is that my 1 more minute? Okay, yes, perfect. I'm wrapping up. Figuring out how to engage people who are spiritual, not religious, right? I think we all know that the nuns, people who have no faith in particular, are increasing now, and many of those people are looking for something, some sort of community, and so how do we serve them? And I think having an open and accepting religious tradition is probably helpful for that.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Bosson. Our next speaker for today is Reverend Godwin. Reverend Godwin is the Abbot of the Houston Zen Center in Houston. She's also the director of the Soto Zen Buddhism International Center with its office in San Francisco, California. She began her Zen training in 1985 at the San Francisco Zen Center and received ordination there in 1991. As a Zen priest, she trained monastically for more than 12 years at a monastery in California, as well as a monastery in Japan. She moved to Houston, Texas in 2003 to help found the Houston Zen Center, Shounji. Reverend Godwin now trains novice Zen Buddhist priests, teaches classes on Buddhism, and teaches Buddhist ceremonies in Houston, as well as in other temples in North America. She travels extensively to maintain relations with other Zen temples internationally, as well as throughout North America. So the 2 questions for tonight. Tell us a bit about yourself and what drew you to become a faith leader, and how does your faith present spiritual beliefs to the modern generation?
Thank you so much. And also thank you, Swami. I do feel like after you and after Colin, there's not much to say, but we're all spiritual people, so there's a lot to say. Following Colin's lead a little bit, my own journey to my current role and my faith is inextricably intertwined with what Buddhism is, so I have to talk about that. And I was raised in California in a sort of religious family, and then when I moved to go to college, I got distracted, but something was always missing. So I started looking for a home, a spiritual home. I went to a number of churches and beautiful churches all over the place and waited to find my home. And I basically had given up. And then I went to, not in a bad way, just no home. And then I, under kind of stress, which I now understand is one of the most significant modern situations or illnesses, feeling stress, I went to, someone actually said, well, you should go meditate. I had stress, but I also had a deep question about what's this mind? What's going on with this mind? Why is it so questing and divided? Basically, it felt divided. So a friend said, why don't you try meditation? So I went to the only temple I knew of in San Francisco that taught meditation, and it was immediately right to sit in peace in a holy space and settle myself on myself was immediately right for me. And shortly after that, I asked one of the people who was actually the door watch, we called it, somebody who stands at the door to make sure you have a legitimate reason for being there. I said, can you tell me a little about those ceremonies that they do? And he said, sounds like you want to be a priest. So I said, no. And here I am. So it called me. And it was so lovely today because so much of what Buddhism in America represents is the whole family style. Many of the moves and the implements used for worship came from India. We could say our Buddhism now is made in India, but it's also made in China and made in Japan. And we're trying to honor this entire thousands of years of tradition and keep it open to modern people. So somehow I ended up meditating, and it felt so right and continued to feel right, partly because Buddhism is quite rational. Zen is a very rational practice. It's really about how the mind works, how your actions have consequences, how you learn to take responsibility in a world that's karmically quite challenging. So I found my home in that way and continued. Then living in California in the monastery, I thought that I loved monastic life, which is not as simple as some people think. All of you who've lived in practice centers know it's very human. So, but I really liked it, liked the simplicity and the clarity of the goals, which are to wake up and get yourself out of the way and help all beings, basically. But then I was walking across the Golden Gate Bridge with a large group of people of all faiths, and we were asked to show up in our most radiant religious garb to protest some war. And so we spanned the Golden Gate Bridge, we held hands, we all had unflowing robes. And as I was walking back, I was walking with an Episcopalian minister, and he turned to me and said, "What's your calling?" And in Buddhism, we don't talk about calling so much, but I thought, I'll go deep and see what that feels like. So I went deep, and what's my calling? Houston is my calling. Because I'd been visiting here a few times, but I thought, well, they're nice people, but I'm a monastic. But I thought, Houston's my calling. It's time to go to Houston and help found this center and also deal with the reality of people who are living very intense spiritual lives and working in the world, families, jobs, challenges. So Houston was my calling. And I came, and I've now been here for 20 years, and I've changed, but my respect for what all of us as humans are trying to do has deepened so much. And I really have changed. But one of the things I understand when Swamiji was talking about the importance of harmony, and also in the Unitarian, the basis of Unitarianism, harmony takes action. So it's not just a passive kind of going with the flow, I suppose. It's really an active engagement with everything that's going on and a willingness to be really honest and changed by this. So that's how I found my way to Zen Buddhism. Is that good? Okay.
And the second question, how does your faith present spiritual beliefs to the modern generation?
Okay. Well, as I said about my own discovery of the meeting of myself with Buddhism, it met a person like me. I'm a modern person. You're all modern people. So we need to find the thing that meets us. And I'm always paying attention to that. So Zen is a school of Buddhism, and we trace the story of Zen to a meeting that Lord Buddha had with one of his major disciples, Mahakashapa. And Buddha was sitting up sort of like this and not saying anything. And he raised up a flower and he twirled the flower. And Mahakashapa, out of all this audience, they didn't have masks on in this assembly. So Mahakashapa, there she is, she smiled. Mahakashapa smiled. And Buddha said, Mahakashapa has the true Dharma eye, the Dharma gate. And that's the first transmission of this way of this intimate communication and this intimate recognition of each other's humanity. So that's the basis of Zen. And it's also part of this school called Mahayana Buddhism. So it means big vehicle Buddhism, which basically means everybody can get on. And that's what we manifest. Everybody can come in. We have a rabbi who's a member of our group. We have several Sunni Muslims. We have a Baptist minister is a member of our group, because the door into Buddhism, Lord Buddha said, what I teach is suffering and the end of suffering. That's it. And of course, the end of suffering is a kind of bliss and awakening, but the basic teaching is meet people who are suffering and help them. So we have this great and very popular teaching now, because we're famous for teaching meditation, and lots of people want to learn meditation. So what we have to offer is meditation, which we keep adapting a bit to the modern world. We keep trying to make it more and more accessible while still holding the core of the teaching, but making it more and more accessible so that people can come. We'll even call it stress relief. Come and learn stress relief, learn how to be in your life in the world that you happen to find yourself in. So that's one of the main things that Zen can offer. The other thing that we can offer, and I think everybody in this room can offer this, but we're quite clear about, we make it explicit that what we teach is karma and the way causes and conditions work. So I've found that the younger modern people, not you probably, but the younger modern people are really hungry to learn about precepts, the moral core of their lives, the teachings of Buddhism and other spiritual traditions, of course, about how to live an ethical life. This is really important because there's a lot of clamor in our society about that tends to push people into a selfish and defensive mode. So if we are teaching ethics and morals, we're helping people understand total interconnectedness with all things. So we emphasize certain aspects of Buddhism more than others: the meditation side, the ethical side, interconnectedness, which people are really hungry for because it's reality. So I think that we also have to shape our teaching in our Zen Center to the modern comfort with classes. So instead of only offering religious experiences, although we do, our services are quite similar, we shape things in terms of classes because people like to know. There's a lot of fear in the world, so people like to know exactly what they're getting in for. Okay, I can commit to a 5-week class. So learning how to adapt to the needs of modern people is our job as spiritual leaders, and that's what we do. I want to say also that at the same 1893 Conference of World Religions in Chicago. It was the first time that a Zen teacher was invited to speak. So a great teacher named Soyen Shaku came from Japan and gave a lecture. And before he came from Japan, he and a bunch of very important Zen teachers got together and talked about this. This is your chance. You're going to speak to the great continent of America. What are you going to say? And he said, well, they're really used to having only one God. So let's just say there's only one Buddha. So actually, there are a whole lot of Buddhas and a whole lot of deities, but Soyen Shaku shaped our understanding here in the West by saying there's only Shakyamuni Buddha, and so I'm revealing to you there are a lot of Buddhas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend Godwin. Our next speaker for today is Nasir Hafiz Malik. Nasir Hafiz Malik is a brilliant person from the energetic city of Houston, Texas. Nasir stands out in his neighborhood and beyond as an inspirational figure thanks to his desire to make a positive difference. Nasir is well known for his unwavering commitment and wide range of accomplishments as a master builder. His life story is a monument to strength, resilience, drive, and compassion. Nasir is firmly committed to serving humanity because he belongs to the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, of which he sees himself as a humble servant. He has a strong sense of empathy thanks to his upbringing as an Ahmadi Muslim, which drives him to devote his efforts to enhancing the lives of those around him. Nasir has been serving the Ahmadiyya Muslim community for the past 41 years. He has held many different positions and is currently serving as a Director of Public Affairs and is also a part of the National Interfaith team. And he is also an ordained minister with the American Marriage Ministries. Nasir has also served as a president of the Northeast Houston Interfaith Group. He has proven to be an extraordinary leader with a propensity for invention as an entrepreneur or professional in his chosen sector. Nasir is married to a wonderful woman and has 3 exceptional kids. So the 2 questions for tonight: can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what drew you to become a faith leader? And how does your faith present spiritual beliefs to the modern generation?
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. May Allah's blessing be upon all of you. First of all, thank you for having us here. Nothing makes me more happy to be part of wonderful people. And I think there was a reason they put me in the middle, because I feel like a rookie among all the senior members here, So I'm not a religious person in a way that, minister or a rabbi or pastor, but I always like to get to know people. I would like to know what other faiths can offer each other to be a better person. And I moved to Houston in 2007 and started getting involved in interfaith. And before this, we were sitting down in a room and I was telling Kim that I just realized I've attended and held close to over 100 interfaiths since 2007. And I felt really blessed to meet so many people who belongs to different faith, different ethnic background, but we have one thing in common, that we wanted to serve the humanity and we want to respect and love each other. You have given a wonderful introduction, so I'm going to say a few words about the community I belong to. Most of you may have heard, but some of you may not have heard about our community. So I belong to the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, or the Muslims who believe in the Messiah, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian. Peace be upon him. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad founded Ahmadiyya Muslim community in 1889 as a revival movement within the Islam, emphasizing its essential teaching of peace, love, justice, and sanity of life. Today, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is the world's largest Islamic community under one divine appointed leader, His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad. May Allah be his helper. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community spans over 200 nations with the membership exceeding tens of millions. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad claimed to be the metaphorical second coming of Jesus Christ and a Mahdi, whose advent Prophet Muhammad's peace and blessing of Allah be upon him foretold. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community believed that the God sent Mirza Ghulam Ahmad to end religious war, condemn bloodshed, and restore morality, justice, and peace. He reformed Muslims of fanatical belief and practice by vigorously championing Islam truly teaching. He also recognized the noble teaching of the great religions founders and saints, including Zoroaster, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, Luther, and Guru Nanak, and explained how their original teaching coverage into true Islam. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is the leading Islamic organization to categorically reject terrorism. Over a century ago, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad emphatically declared that the jihad by the sword has no place in Islam. He instead taught Muslims to follow the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, examples, and defend Islam with a bloodless intellectual jihad of pen. Accordingly, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad penned over 80 books and tens of thousands of letters delivered to hundreds of lectures and engaged source of public debates. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community continues to use education to peacefully reform Muslim and revive Islam worldwide. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad reminded Muslims of God's promise to safeguard Islam through Khilafat, spiritual institution of successorship of prophethood. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community believed that the only Islamic Khilafat can peacefully unite humanity. So far, now the fifth Khalifa is serving the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Our current Khalifa, Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, reside in United Kingdom and serve the community spiritual and administrative head. Under the leadership of Khilafat, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community has built over 16,000 mosques and 600 schools and 30 hospitals and has translated the Holy Quran into 70 languages. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community progress Islam in a true teaching of peace and tolerance, and 24-hour satellite television, MTA, the internet, alislam.org, and the print Islam International. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is the only Islamic organization to endorse the separation of mosque and state. Despite facing bitter faith-based persecution in numerous Muslim majority nations, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community continues to advocate the universal human rights and for all religious and other persecuted minorities. It likewise invests heavily in women's equality, education, and empowerment programs. Its members are among the most law-abiding, educated, and engaged Muslim in the world. So this is just a little brief introduction about our community. So now to the second.
Yes. The
Okay.
second question for tonight is, how does your faith present spiritual beliefs to the modern generation?
You know, when I got this email from Sapnaji, I was very much touched because I feel that we thought only the Ahmadis or Ahmadi Muslims feel that it needs to be talked about, but by getting this invitation, I think this is a universal concern. So I have few things that I'll share, which I believe that can help. The main challenge making faith relevant to the youth, everybody is religious, young and old. It depends on what are we religious about, whether it is societal values or traditional faith values. Modern time has access to a lot of cheap and easy players, TV shows, movies, streaming, YouTube videos, TikTok, Instagram, even fast food and snacks, casual physical relationship, material goods available anywhere. Since faith asks us to control desire and to be disciplined, it gets difficult. With all these cheap players, which are harder to control when we are young. Youth have to be taught and practically a long-term thinking and being disciplined now to stop immorality and the root. Faith should be presented as a way to protect on self and society from longer-term issues such as depression, anxiety, which arise from chasing short-term pleasures. Youth also get distant examples of older generation. Parents and elders practicing their faith with sincerity makes up for the lack of knowledge or language barrier. Not having a good relationship with parents is a big cause. They will attack thing that is closer to parents, which is their faith. Parents should have an open communication from younger years and have frank discussion with their children. Then I have a couple of other points. Our religious places of worships are empty of the youth. Mostly it is elderly folks who go to the worship places in these days. Most of the modern generation is tending towards to atheism, going away from the strict religious beliefs. Our approach should to be invite them to use an open-minded approach and to think about creation of a wonderful universe that it cannot come into existence on its own. There has to be wonderful creator. The creator is called upon by different names, but in essence, he is the same. The creator is loving, gracious, and the merciful. For our constant guidance, he has sent prophets and messengers to all the people, regardless where they may be living in the world. His spiritual guidance is universal for all the people and all the time. It is important to have a faith in his presence, and it helps us to live a loving and peaceful life. Every individual, male or female, can establish personal relationship with the loving Creator. This personal connection makes a person happy and thankful for his or her entire life, and his entire life become a blessing. So, I believe that every person, I can give you example of my kids. We were talking about this topic last night. As a Muslim, when I was growing up and I used to follow the teachings and the things my parents were doing. And when I was practicing my faith, my kids were young. My little girl, she was, I think, 8 months, 9 months. She used to climb over me when I used to pray, because when I go down to prostrate, she used to climb over my shoulders. And it was a game for her, but I never said anything bad to her. I wait till she comes down, or she likes when I, got up and she kind of slides back. But over the time, when she start walking, and next thing I see, she start standing next to me. So she saw me. And as a parents, we have to lead by example. If we as a parents teach our kids good things, I can guarantee you that they will remain as a good kids. But we are involved in so many materialistic things in this world. You see, both parents are working. Kids have all these things I have talked about on their fingertips. And so we, as a parents and as society, have to decide what is more important for us: our kids, our generations, or these materialistic things. Once we get that understanding in our head, I think the answer will be very easy for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. Our next speaker for today is Ms. Kim Mabry. Ms. Kim Mabry has worked for Interfaith Ministries for Greater Houston for 3 years, starting just 8 days before the pandemic. Before working at the Interfaith Ministries, Ms. Mabry served the United Methodist Church in a pastoral leadership at St. Paul's UMC for 9 years and the Houston Methodist Hospital for 5 years. In her 5 years at the hospital, she also served as lead project manager for a pilot program for faith and health. Ms. Mabry has a Master of Divinity from Perkins School of Theology at Southern Methodist University and a Certificate of Clinical Education and Chaplaincy Ms. Mabry earned her bachelor's degree in management from Texas A&M in College Station. Kim and her husband Mike have been married for 30 years. They have 2 boys, Miles, age 24, and Brandon, age 21. They live in Friendswood with their 2 dogs and 3 cats. So the 2 questions for tonight. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and what drew you to become a faith leader? And the second question, how does your faith present spiritual beliefs to the modern generation?
Thank you. I'm happy to tell the story. I actually had to take some notes because I haven't had the chance to tell like my story in probably about 7 years. And this will be the first time I've ever said it to an interfaith audience. I'm used to telling it in a Christian context. And so I'm really interested in how my story resonates, because I'm curious if any of you, as we all live in this larger American culture, which is predominantly Christian, if you have encountered any of the same things that I have with the American Christian culture. So I'll start by saying that I don't know that all Christians would consider me a Christian, but I consider myself a very progressive Christian, and my story definitely takes place within the Christian context. Earlier, from our Buddhist friend, we heard the word calling. And in Christianity, that's a very common term that we use when we ask other faith leaders, tell me your call story. People always want to know, what's your call story? How did you become a pastor? How did you become a leader? And it's one of 2 answers. Either one, people have this come to Jesus moment where they get chills up their spine and they feel the Holy Spirit and they know they're supposed to be a pastor, just like lightning. Then there are those of us who have a journey of ongoing tug-of-war with God, where we have a journey of denial, and then the Holy Spirit speaks up on you and says, no, you're the one. You can guess which story is mine. So I was not raised in the Christian context of what is normal, I guess, being taken to church. I was what they called a keister, if you haven't heard that before, meaning that you go to Christmas and Easter, the 2 high holy days. So we call that a keister Christian. So I was definitely a keister Christian, but again, living in the Christian world that we are, I definitely had lots of friends who would invite me to camp and lock-ins, and there was always stuff to do. Vacation Bible school in the Christian context for us moms is basically 2 weeks of free childcare. So you're like, yeah, go be a Lutheran this week. Go be a Presbyterian, because they take your kid all day. So I was definitely that kind of Christian. I wasn't really raised in the community. However, I have always had a very curious spirit. I have the tenacity of being, my mother would tell you, relentlessly inquisitive to the point that she's like, just stop asking me questions, Kim. So I definitely went into my adulthood, my journey, with more questions and never satisfied with answers. So I would say that, again, when you're curious about Christianity in the American context, it is the conservative voice that is the loudest. So if you want to know about Christianity but do not live in a family that fosters exploration, you watch TV. And that is not the theology of Christianity that personally I am most proud of. It is the loudest voice of the most extreme theology. So that raised a lot of questions for me. I happened to be raised in a military family, so I had the blessing of living in many, many parts of our country. I've lived in Denver, Dallas, Philadelphia, Kansas City, Fort Worth, San Antonio. Did I already say San Francisco? And Houston, and just all over. And the first moment that I think that I felt the call was when I moved from San Francisco. I was in urban San Francisco. We lived on the Presidio, which is an Army base. And I went to Sherman Elementary on Lombard Street. And my classroom was like the United Nations. Half were Vietnamese Buddhists. I had girls in my classroom who had scars from the Vietnam War, from shrapnel. I had Ikram from Turkey, who was Muslim. I had Jane, who was from Russia. I could go on and on, every religion. And as a girl in 4th and 5th grade, I would go to their homes and I would see the kumquats and the tangerines and the figurines and the red envelopes during Lunar New Year. And I never knew what that was. So I had this incredible exposure. We moved from urban San Francisco to suburban Atlanta, Georgia in the 1980s. If you remember the 1980s, it was rich for televangelists. This is all the Jerry Falwells, and all of it was like on so many channels. And in suburban Atlanta, Georgia, if you've never been there, there is a Southern Baptist church on every street corner. And I was taken to several lock-ins. And lock-ins are when you, as a junior high person, you go and they literally lock you in, and it's like this fun junior high experience slumber party. But there's always a religious point to it. And if you're familiar with our friends in the Southern Baptist Church, their theology is very direct in that the threat and risk of hell is a huge part of their theology. And I remember being taken into a room, and all of us were there, and we were told to bow our heads, and they said, they wanted to know, if you died today, do you know that you would go to heaven? And this scared me to death because I hadn't been baptized. And all I could think about were all my friends in San Francisco that I knew as a child, and thought, are you telling me that all those beautiful children that I knew, that they're going to hell, but it's not their fault they were born in Vietnam? Like, these are all the thoughts going through my mind as a small child. And then thinking about myself, and just although I didn't know a lot about God and Christianity, I knew that Jesus was a really good person, and I knew that God was love. And even as a 4th and 5th grade, I can't remember if I was in 4th or 5th grade child, I remember thinking, if God is love, how can what you're telling me be true? How could a God of love be sending all these people to hell? Like, that did not resonate in my head. But out of fear, I raised my head and asked for the blessing, and they took me in the back. And, some of you have heard this story before, maybe. In the Christian context, this is a very common story that many of us have been exposed to as younger children who are in a very spiritually vulnerable position. So that had a really strong impact on me. And I spent many years of my life rejecting Christianity because I thought that the conservative message was the message of Christianity. Because to hear any other message of Christianity, you have to actively seek, question, and find the right people. Because what you hear is what we still hear in American Christian circles today. So it's hard to find. But then I found a moment where, this is going to sound trivial, but we have to remember, in the American context, there was a period of time right after September 11th, where first there were 3 things that happened, bam, 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 for me, that gave me the personal courage to speak about religion out loud. Because, again, in the American context, we're told you don't talk about politics or religion out loud in unfamiliar circles. So again, that limits you on how you can talk about religion openly and ask questions unless you feel like you're in a safe space. So finding a safe space was a journey of mine. After September 11th, I didn't really know much about Islam, but September 11th put Islam front and center for all of us, if you didn't know about it. But also, if you remember, there were a lot of conservative Christians led by Jerry Falwell who said that 9/11 happened because of all of the gay lifestyle that was being led in New York, and that's why it happened. So you had fundamentalists both in Islam and in Christianity who basically were holding this theology over September 11th. Luckily, I was in a Methodist church in Hurst, Texas, and that pastor said words that really turned things around for me. And he said, if your devotion to religious scripture is stronger than your compassion for humanity, it is fanaticism and it is wrong, no matter what religion you subscribe to. And when I heard those words, I sat up and I thought, I can be a Christian. I don't have to hide my thoughts and my feelings anymore, because that's who I am. And you never hear that. And he just said that from the pulpit. So right after that, remember, this is probably going to sound trivial, but it was huge. Do y'all remember the book by Dan Brown called The Da Vinci Code? How many of y'all read that? Okay, so that was all about the historical Jesus, right? And then right after that, you had Mel Gibson's movie, The Passion of the Christ, that came out. So yes, these were two social things that sound trivial. However, being American, those social, a book and a movie, that pushes things into the common conversation, right? So that was the first time in American culture that all of a sudden it was okay to talk about religion, because you were talking about it in the context of this Dan Brown story. And you were talking about it in the context of Mel Gibson in the Passion of the Christ. And again, I found myself in a church that embraced that conversation and said, let's talk about it. Some churches were like, no, we can't talk about that. That's dangerous. That's a slippery slope. Anyways, fast forward. So I realized after that no, I can talk about this. I was empowered in the language and the stories that I heard, and that drove me to seminary. I moved to Houston, and I moved to a town called Friendswood, and I was looking for a progressive church, and I started asking around. And this is the last part of my story, my call story. I met a woman, and she proceeded to take it upon herself to send an email out to the entire city of Friendswood, Texas, with the subject line, "Beware," in all capital letters. And it said, beware of this woman, Kim Mabry, who is out spreading unchristian theology, and she will lead you to a slippery slope. And in that moment, I was propelled back to that little girl in that Southern Baptist church. And I thought, why does this hurt me so bad? And it drew me to seminary, because I thought, I never want to be that kind of a minister who abuses the power to inflict pain and fear of God on other people. So that's my story. I never want to scare anyone.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mabry. And our last speaker for today is Swami Sarvadevananda Ji Maharaj. Swami Sarvadevananda is a minister and spiritual leader of the Vedanta Society of Southern California and is a monk of the Ramakrishna Order of India. Swami joined the monastery at Belur Mutt in 1965. During this time, he also had the privilege to serve at a camp for refugees affected by the Bangladesh War in 1971. Swami became the head of the Ramakrishna Mission, Shikra, in 1988. While there, he initiated literacy and health programs for hundreds of underprivileged villagers and performed relief and rehabilitation work for the homeless. In 1993, Swami Sarvadevananda was posted to the Vedanta Society of Southern California to serve as an assistant minister. He was then appointed the minister and spiritual leader of the Vedanta Society of Southern California in 2012. Swami Sarvadevananda Ji was appointed the minister in charge of the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston in 2016, and he is also the president of its boards of directors. In addition to regular lectures and classes, Swami Sarvadevananda addresses schools, colleges, and religious groups throughout Southern California and other parts of the U.S. He represented the Vedanta Society as a delegate on the Interreligious Council of Southern California and the Hindu-Catholic Dialogue of Los Angeles, and serves as one of the directors of the Hindu Students Organization at University of Southern California. So the two questions for tonight: please tell us a little bit about yourself and what drew you to become a faith leader, and how does your faith present spiritual beliefs to the modern generation?
Thank you all who have presented now wonderful, lively thoughts which resonate in the same feeling which we are all standing here. There's nothing to talk about uh, how I'm drawn to this faith. This is the most rational philosophy of the world, where you can question every point. I don't believe this, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like that. What am I? Who am I? This is eternal question. It does not mean who is Muslim, who is Hindu, Christian, or any other. Just say, who am I? Am I this mortal being? Am I this person who is born and died? This is the person we are then, and we will be one day into ashes. What is the purpose of life? Why I am here? This was a calling, as you said, calling. That was the inner calling. And that there were this Ramakrishna order. I saw that many sparkling Swamis who have dedicated their life, bright, brilliant faces, and they're dedicated to the good of the world. They're meditating, they're praying, they're doing all these things. That called me into this tradition. So I'm not a leader, but I'm a student, first of all. And I have not selected, but our senior Swamis, they have posted me, you have to do this. So it has come upon me. So this is my first part. Second part, how do your faith present spiritual belief to the modern generation? Faith we present, we are very happy with people who don't believe in God. We are happy with people who believe in God. We are happy with the idea of Buddha. We preach Buddha ourselves. We preach the atheistic lovers of ideas of living in the modern world. Because it is to question and question and question. Sri Swami Vivekananda, who is our leader, who came in 1893 in the World Parliament of Religions, he presented this idea based on the ground of Sri Ramakrishna's experience, that truth is one, only one, and truth can be explored in hundreds of ways. One can reach the top of a mountain to the eastern trail, someone go to the western trail, northern trail, southern trail. In the journey they will have different experiences. But when they reach the top, they are the one. And that is the ultimate truth. We are all one. And Vedanta is the background of teaching us from the very beginning that we are all one infinite ocean of consciousness. And in that we are all bubbles and ripples. And where we distinguish ourselves when one bubble and one ripple, we focus on that. But we go to the very background of it. That is all water. It's all same content. Only name and form is different in different costumes. So this is the most advantageous preaching of Vedanta. Harmony is the foundation of our life. Peace is our foundation of our life. Joy is our foundation of our life. We forget that when I focus on my little ego and spin around that, my selfishness, my ego, my pride, when I transcend that and look in a bigger, vaster idea, selflessness comes. Can see in you me. In you there is nothing but me. The same me means the big I, the Lord, God. Every language talks in different language. So that is the language and preaching. So we find, as this I find in my experience, when the students come, young people come, they want to understand why we have doing this light waving. What is the nonsense? Taking little lamp and wick and then burning and then mantra chanting. What is going on? Most of the young people, I like them, they want to know this, but we are incapable of teaching them, decoding the rituals which is behind. What we did this evening prayer is a ritual. You may say Hindus are worshipping this temple, this gods and goddesses and idols. No. A picture of your father, when you see in a photograph, it is no picture for you. It ignites the spirit of your father's love and compassion. So when you see these pictures, the holiness, love, joy, all sparks in our mind. The symbol, that's the mosque and church and temples are all places of pilgrimage because there it ignites our divine entity inside. So when we face these young people, they come, we want to tell them that decoding these rituals. In every religion, there is a waving lamp, candle. So here is also what we are doing is the embodiment of infinite consciousness and love, universal. But we do worship through the form through the formless. No contradiction. Form and formless are not contradiction. When I am from a distance, I am seeing the form. But when you go close, we see that infinite reality. So how to pray? How to pray the Lord who has created stars and galaxies, who has created moons and stars, earth and planets and infinite number of, and whose will is leading the whole galaxy into the void. What is that power? Can it comprehend that? We say God, God, God. We have no idea. That's why we always symbolize it. Symbolically, we are offering. And what we are offering? The whole world, as if we are offering the light, the sun, as if I am culminating, calling on all the energy of the brightness and luminosity and waving at the feet of the Lord. No? Bring that how the mind expands into a higher realm unless we know the meaning. We are giving the 5 elements in the whole world. 5 elements, air, water, fire, etc., which constitute everything. So we offer everything to God. God's thing we are offering to God. So if we decode, that's why one time there is a keyboard center in Los Angeles. It's a very, very pioneering interfaith movement. There we have all the religious leaders came, the Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, and others. Everyone talked about the decoding the rituals. What is your ritual means actually? The ritual is an expression, but what is the inner meaning? So I think what I feel most satisfaction when you find people are coming with questions, doubts. You are ready, you have to question. Yes, as much question, that much clarity comes. And then try to understand. Through that, remove the cobwebs of your mind. And when the mind will be clear, you will see the truth. And we are not to give anything. As Swamiji's words quoted by the Swami Kirti Pradhananda at the beginning, that you plant a seed, and how its seed grows into a plant. It grows in its own way. What is our job? Our job is to give water, take out the weeds, and then put it to the light, tender, nurture. That is our work. But the seed will grow. The truth will manifest itself. As you have said, the ideal father should be, as a father, we should show something to the children. They will learn from our life as morality and very basic foundation of spirituality. Love is the very foundation of religion. So these are to be expressed through our personal living. People can live and see us, and that is manifesting in our life. And also, should be ready to explain the purpose of life, why you are alive, what is life, what is the spiritual practice, why you will be coming to God, what is the need of God. I don't need God, I can live without God. If there is fight and struggle, we have enough in our worldly day, every day, earning money, and we go to job and we have enough fighting. Why shall I fight in the name of God? So people feel dejected. That's why they call it, we are spiritual. Nowadays, in modern term, I am not religious, I am spiritual. What does it mean? They are seeking for. There is a deep inner urge for them to seek the divine, the purity, the love, the compassion. So that is their calling, inner calling. And we should have to supply their needs by being ready to explain, to understand ourselves and to explain that there is only oneness at the back of all our diversity. There is only, we are different because of our mind is different, mind is colored, our mind is clean. The clouded mind, I don't see the sun. With a clear mind, clear cloud-free space, I see the sun everywhere. And the depth of the cloud reduces, brightness comes. luminosity comes, character grows, joy comes, peace comes, love comes. No, that's why Swami Vivekananda said every religion has produced men and women of exalted character. They're the leaders of the whole world. They're the bright light lamp. So we have to put this idea probably among the young generation who comes before us, to this idea and also lead a life. Let people see us. It's a great responsibility for the leaders. Let them see our face and see the sparkling joy of love. So people will come. It's so much suffering in the world. Dukkha, dukkha, dukkha. Sarvam dukkham. A Buddhism say. We also say everything is dukkha. Everything is suffering. Where is God? Only put God. Ramakrishna gave the example. Everything is zero in life. Your accomplishment, your PhD, your doctorate, you are a nuclear physicist, you are Nobel laureate. What that? When you die, it all goes into the ashes. What you have achieved. So that is the accomplishment which should be inspiring, and we should be living that life so that they can see us, and we try to be the people of spiritual people. And where is spirituality? There is friendship. Ramakrishna gave an example that all the jackals howl the same way, meaning all the holy people in the world, in whole religion, they talk about the same purity and love and joy and embracing one. And we are all one in the background. If we go to that, and every intelligent young man, young woman, or even the people who don't believe, they will be finding some path to peace and harmony, and that will bring a great, grand society which we are expecting. Thank you all.
Thank you, Maharaj. So we will now move on to the dialogue portion of tonight. So speakers, you have a total of 10 minutes, and the floor is all yours.
Can you elaborate? What are questions needs to come from there, or
I think,
we have already said enough?
yeah, it's like questions should come that side.
I'll just add, because I got very long-winded in my story, I didn't really answer the second part about modern context and what it says. I work for Interfaith Ministries for Greater Houston. And I think that what my story shared was a time in history when it was easy to live in a silo, right? Before the internet, before cable television, you had an excuse for not being worldly, right? But in the age that we're living in, if you live in a silo, by a certain age, for the most part, it's by choice. And you cannot unring the bell of interfaith, of diversity, of inclusiveness, and that if you want to be a person of wisdom in the world today, you have to engage in this kind of work. And that's the work that we do at Interfaith Ministries for Greater Houston, is to help connect people to grow wisdom at large in the community so that you go into the world with a better understanding of your neighbors. If you have graduated from college and you don't know what Ramadan is, you have a serious problem. That is a problem. Because you are going to have people who work for you who are Muslim, and you better know that their fasting and their work day might be a little different than yours, right? If you haven't experienced Diwali, well, first of all, you're just missing out on the best holiday ever. And, you need to have a wisdom today that wasn't expected if you were a child of the 80s and 90s, before the internet, before cable TV. That's what my message would be.
So I would now like to invite our audience members to ask if there's any questions they may have. You might as well talk first. Okay. I would now like to invite our audience members to ask the speakers any questions they may have. Speakers, we request that you keep your answers to around 3 minutes. So audience, the floor is yours.
So if they don't ask us a question, we can ask them a question then? That may motivate them.
We have 2 mics.
Hello? Oh, so this is directed towards Reverend Abbott Godwin and Reverend Sarah Devanda. Basically, it's like I don't know why, but like I've had like some like anger and holding on, and I feel like Buddhism and Hinduism are really good at, I guess, like letting go of stuff. But I guess this could apply to everyone, like any of you guys. But what in your religious experience or spiritual experience helped you move past like traumas and angers and like frustrations with the world around you?
Yeah. Do you want to start? Or? Okay, I will start. And you will correct. That's such an important question. Thank you so much. And in a lot of the Buddhist communities that I am familiar with, which is a lot, all of us have learned that we have to study anger because it's one of the emotions currently encouraged in our culture. So it's given a lot of free rein. And so understanding how it works is crucial. So we're Buddhists, but all of our information, all of our study is quite ancient, rooted very deep in the ancient traditions. So we study how the mind works in ourselves. How does it work? What does it feel like? What are these mental states arising? And what is it that feeds them? What is it that softens them? Loving kindness, meditation, focusing on love is considered the greatest antidote to anger. And being in community, which is what all spiritual traditions find to be one of the most crucial things, helps us encourage each other to do that hard work of understanding anger. So in myself, I study it, I watch the arising, and then the more I know about myself, the more I can show compassion, feel compassion for other people. But it's really interesting in our culture to watch that anger is so encouraged these days, as if there were something authentic about that particular feeling, when it's just a feeling, just like any other cloud passing in the air. It's not you, it's not me, it's a cloud. But so watch what happens when it does arise, and then ask your friends to help you see through it as just one of the passing phenomena. So yeah, you're right. Buddhists and Vedanta are very good at understanding the impermanence of feelings in a way that's very authentic. You can have your feeling and understand that it's still going to move on.
We know why, analyze our anger, why anger happens. Our Vedanta teaches that I want something, I wish this way. And if that is obstructed, my desire is obstructed, then naturally emotion comes anger. And when we become angry, we forget our dignity, our purpose, who we are. We behave not like human, sometimes subhuman. So this happening, but if we watch why it is happening, Vedanta teaches, observe it, why it is happening. It is, you are asking for something. If you say that, you don't care for that. The wave of anger which is coming, it can immediately have its calmness. Why I should be angry with this? I tried this way, the best way it should happen, but it has not happened. Let me be in peace. Contentment comes the next question. I want contentment or to disturb myself. It is destroying me physically. Toxic things are generated in the body. Anger, outward expression of that, breaking the wall, breaking the glass, all these things are the reaction. Whose benefit is for that? When we understand it is bad, then we have to go to the cause. And we have to learn to ignore certain things. Okay, if I wanted this, it didn't happen, and he or she became an obstacle. Okay, what's there? I shall try in another thing. So it is a self-control what Vedanta teaches. The world will be always agitating us. World will create anger between us. But there should be cause of anger, and I shall not be angry. This is a conquest of life. That is spiritual strength and power to overcome. What is coming, I am not subject to that. I am over it. So this is a courage, this is strength, and we will have to practice that. Swami Vivekananda said, strength is life, weakness is death. So it is not encouraging me, it is not giving me strength. This is my weakness, I give value to that, I want that, and that person, that situation, that environment is obstacle. Therefore I am angry. I justification of my anger, but Vedanta says, why? You can ignore it. Anything, every day, thousands of things are happening where I can be angry. But many places we manage to overcome it, and some places we forget. So if we are watchful, as the Reverend Ye said, so it will be same way we can be able to conquer them. And conquer is power, and makes you greater personality, stronger personality. Thank you.
If the audience doesn't have any questions, then I'll start asking my questions. So, one of the questions that I had was, did you hold the same view of your religion when you were a teenager of the modern generation as you do now?
I think the patience grow as you grow, right? So I think when we are young, what the gentleman just said earlier, I was going to read something from the, I'm going to just read the translation. And though we recite this thing at least 34 or 35 times a day, it says, in the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful, all praise belongs to Allah, the Lord of all the world, the gracious, the merciful, master of the day of judgment. Thee alone do we worship, and thee alone do we implore for help. Guide us in the right path, the path of those whom thou hast bestowed thy blessing, those who have not incurred thy displeasure, and those who have not gone astray. So even though we do that from the childhood, but I think as we grow older, the wisdom prevails, I guess. Patience comes. And every person, I believe, in their mindset, whether they're young or old, they all are good human beings. They all want good things for them. But I think our age does make a difference. You know, we feel more closer to God, and we have more patience. Anger is less, you know, and it's, I think, you know, my elders can second that. It grows with the time. But if you are closer to God, Allah, Lord, whatever you want to call it, then that helps you control your anger. And that helps you become a better person. So yes, as we, I call it wiser, not older, you know. So we get wiser every year. Things do change. Yes, thank you.
I'm being voluntold to answer the question. But yes, by our good abbot friend here. Well, you know, there's that sort of metaphor of fish don't know they're swimming in water. And I feel like actually growing in religious knowledge is sort of learning that you're swimming in water, right? Like that this is the thing, this is the environment in which I'm being shaped. So I think when I was a kid, it just being part of my religious community was just like the natural thing. But then as I got older, I came to understand that there were many other religious perspectives and traditions, and that I was intersecting with them. So I became aware of the water in which I swam.
I would say, I mean, obviously my story, I just told y'all that I went from being a keister to a seminary graduate. So clearly there's a spectrum of understanding there. But I think that what I feel most confident about is asking questions of those, not just of other traditions, but of other branches of Christianity. Because what I have learned is that those on the progressive side or the non-conservative anywhere side of Christianity don't get the same voice, don't get to talk about the alternatives to sacrificial atonement and the things that people hear. And so I remind myself that I want to be that voice of difference, because I wonder how many Kim Mabrys are sitting out there that perhaps have felt shy about who they were spiritually and lived in misunderstanding because they never heard an alternative message. And so I feel much more secure in being able to be that voice of difference. And if those around me think I'm going to hell, that's okay. Like, I don't really care. Where before I was very threatened by that. So I think that asking questions and living in curiosity is now a good thing and not an insecurity.
So you're getting wiser.
Yes.
Actually, we cannot go to hell. Hell is here. We live in such a mood, such a mental condition. Hell is mental condition, an uplifted mental condition. So there is no hell. Hell is our negative thinking, negative, according to Vedanta. We didn't believe in hell and heaven, both are in the mental state. We can be one person in our philosophy. It says, try to be contented. Always be contented. Mudita. Moda vritti in the Buddhism and Hinduism. Try to be contented. Okay, I am dissatisfied. I want this. I am a right person. I should get this, but I am deprived. Okay. Many are more deprived than me. Bring that as awareness in your mind. Yeah, I am contented. God has given me this much. I am happy. Let me move and try. Not pessimistic contentment, but optimistic contentment. We try our best. Does it happen? Okay. It didn't happen. God will thank God. And I can be contented. So there is no heaven and hell. Contentment is heaven. And discontent is the hellish experience.
But just to that point, do you know how many Christians don't know that you can be a Christian and not believe in hell? Like, hell is not a prerequisite for being a Christian. Some people that would blow their mind.
So I have a question, if I may, for the other panelists, because it's sort of an observation, which is that I would say that having listened to all of your stories and not knowing necessarily a lot about some of your traditions before coming tonight, we all represent what I would call minority traditions within the sort of larger traditions in which we sit, and sort of, I don't like the word progressive for a lot of reasons, but sort of more liberal or humanitarian or pluralistic or open aspects of those traditions. And I'm wondering if interfaith dialogue, if we think interfaith dialogue is possible, like if we were representatives of the majoritarian versions of our traditions, not that there's such a thing for Unitarians, but the sort of hardline Hindus or the hardline Muslims, or the Christian fundamentalists, which Reverend Mabry was just referring to. Would this sort of interfaith dialogue be possible? And if not, what is our task to sort of figure out how to have a dialogue with those people?
I think the common denominator is the only word.
Yeah.
In all the religions, people can teach, you can become a better Muslim, I can become a better Hindu, you can become a better Christian. But the common denominator of difference of opinion is the only word. If the only word is deleted from the religions, everything will be nice. Everybody says, my religion is the only way to go here. So if you delete only and you continue to preach whatever you are preaching, everything will be just fine.
So, I can resonate to what he's saying. Our community, we were talking earlier, we are the 74th sect of Islam. And we are heavily persecuted in Pakistan and mostly in Muslim countries, which is very sad. And we believe the faith is a matter between you and your God. And no one should come in between. What my friend just said, it's hard. Just like I mentioned, my neighbor across the street would love to come to my house, but would never come to our mosque to have a dialogue because he has 15,000 followers at his church. And if they see him happen to see on a TV or somewhere that he's attended a mosque, he was afraid that he will lose those audience. So unfortunately, some of you may not agree with me, but the religion, some people have taken that is a business now. The good, how good you can sell it. And they have made it so bad that countries have gone down. I'm from Pakistan, but if I go in Pakistan right now, my friend and I, we will be arrested. And I cannot act like a Muslim. I cannot worship like a Muslim. I cannot greet Assalamu alaikum in Pakistan, 3-year imprisonment without a bail. They said Islam is a trademark only for Muslims, just like a Coca-Cola is a trademark for, this is so ridiculous. Have you ever heard that? So those hard-headed people, unfortunately, you cannot win them. They have already decided. Do they believe true teaching of the Quran? Absolutely no. Because if you look at the examples of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, people used to throw stones at him. And there was a lady who used to dump trash on him. Every time he used to pass by her house, she used to throw trash on him. And one day she didn't. And he got worried and concerned, and he went upstairs and knocked on the door, found out she was not feeling good. So these are the examples of the Holy Prophet. And nowadays, they tell us that we cannot say Assalamu alaikum. We cannot act like a Muslim. We cannot worship like a Muslim. Our mosques have been destroyed, our cemeteries. Those kind of people, all we can do is pray to God, the Allah, whatever you want to call. The God give them the wisdom to understand taking a life of any human being is not, Quran says loss of life of one human being is a life lost is entire human being. You should not kill anyone. We are all creators of God. So these people are killing in the name of Allah or God or whatever you want to call it. So those people we cannot, unfortunately, you cannot even sit like that. They will kill all of us before you even think about it. So be careful, my friend.
So this question is like my daily life, right? At Interfaith Ministries, we are always preaching to the choir. We feel like it's the same group of people that come to all of our stuff, who donate, and we can sit around and ask, why don't we ever get people from Second Baptist or, certain mosques within ISGH, which is Islamic Society of Greater Houston? Like, there's certain people that we just can never get to the table. And when we talk to them and ask them about that, they always ask the same question, whether they're Catholic, Southern Baptist, Muslim. They say, why should I do that? And so I feel like we all have to get our elevator speech in sync with one another. We have to all agree on the most important bullet points, and kind of like what you said, like we all have to have a joint marketing plan because they always ask that question. Why would I do that? What difference would that make? Like, they're good. They're where they want to be. So you have to be able to articulate the benefits of understanding others? And I don't know the answer to that.
Their hearts are closed. Unfortunately, their hearts are closed.
That's forever, though. I think there's a door that can be opened, but I don't know how to do it.
But Kim, again, I hate to share this over. 98 people on a Friday while praying, same worship, same book, same thing. They were slaughtered in the mosque. 98 people in 2 different mosques in Pakistan in 2010. The government didn't do a crap. So what was the reason? Their hearts are sealed. And when I talk to this if I talk to some Muslims here, I ran for election a few years back, and a friend of mine made a joke. He said, Nasser, Christians don't want to vote for you because they think you're a Muslim. And your Muslim friends don't want to vote for you because they think you're not a Muslim. So, so if you go and talk to them and they say, oh, he's not a Muslim. So I've been very bold, just like Kim said. I asked them, I said, are we going to share a grave? Are we going to be in the same grave? Are we going to be roommates? Oh, no. You have your grave, we have our grave. I said, okay, when I go in front of God on Day of Judgment, are you going to read my charge sheet? Or you're going to read yours? Oh, I'm going to read mine. I'm not responsible. So I said, then who the heck are you to tell me I'm not a Muslim? It's between me and my Allah. So just think about one thing. When Allah or God has never given the authority to prophets, the prophets of God, to ask anyone about which faith do they practice, who are we? And Day of Judgment, God is going to ask you, well, when Kim said I'm a Christian and Nasser said I'm a good Muslim, and I said La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, which means there's none worthy of God and Muhammad is a prophet of God, then who were you to tell him that he's not a Muslim? So I told all my other Muslim friends, be prepared for that question on Day of Judgment. So, so their hearts are sealed. They think, like she said, they think they are it. They don't need to have this dialogue. They don't say bad thing about our community, but this brings me to, in British time in England, there was a gentleman who owns a press thing, and he put in an ad, all Muslims are non-Muslims. All Muslims are non-Muslims. And a big headline on the front of the newspaper. Guess what? All these 40, 50 mullahs, pastors, whatever you want to call them, they went to the judge and said, look at what this guy have done. He's saying we are not Muslims. So judge called that, and this is a true story. It was happened in India in British time. And the judge called the news owner guy and publisher, and he said, do you want to say something? He said, I'm sticking to my story. And they all said, no, you're wrong. We all are Muslims. He said, Judge, do me a favor. Send them all out. Call one by one. So when Sunni came, they said, we are true Muslims, but the rest are not. When Wahhabi came, they said, oh, we are true Muslims, rest are not. Shia. So all those 30, 40 pastors came, they were saying, we are the true Muslims, but the rest are. So he said, Judge, you see? So it is what it is, unfortunately. When they declared, in the Constitution of Pakistan, in 1974, all 73 other sects of Islam gathered and declared our community a non-Muslim. And next day in the newspaper said, all 73 gathered and declared the 74th sect of Islam a non-Muslim. So what can you do there? So the guy proved that he was right.
I'm going to change the subject.
No worries.
Just a small, simple. Just a simple question to Reverend Abbott Goodwin. I read in one of the books of Eckhart Tolle, who has practiced Zen Buddhism. Eckhart Tolle, he is a spiritualist. Eckhart Tolle of Canada. What he said was, when he was just to make a joke, he said that when they meditate in the Zen Buddhism, the monks, not monks, anybody out from the street comes there to meditate. If they fall asleep, they tap them with their ruler to wake them up. That was a joke, I believe. If it is true, why would they force somebody to be focused? If they fall asleep, that's also is relaxing. Why would they do that? I'm just wondering if you have an answer. Thank you.
Only one channel. It wasn't a joke. So in traditional Zen Buddhist temples, it's not a ruler. It's not a little ruler. It's a big ruler, and it's very strong. It's like an oak stick, and they walk behind you. And if you're asleep, sometimes some teachers walk behind you and they hit you if you're asleep or if you're awake. They hit you like right here. I have to tell you, it feels really good. It's just because it's on the fleshy part of your back, and it just brings you right to the present. So it's not so much about really sleeping, it's about not being present. In America, we don't do it anymore because Americans don't like discomfort. But you'd be sued. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's very, like, Colin, may I demonstrate? So here he is, his mind is wandering, and somebody comes.
Would you like me to get a stick?
I've got one.
Okay.
And they come along and they just go whap, whap. And it feels good, doesn't it? It's contact, it's, oh, it really surprises you. So I think all of our spiritual traditions want us to come back. So mudita and equanimity isn't about being gray. It's not about being, unconscious. It's about being quite alert. And you're able to be equanimous with what's happening. And so we want to practice being equanimous with what's happening, because this world is a very complicated place. And people have really strong opinions this way and that. So you don't handle it by just kind of going to sleep. You handle it by staying quite present. Isn't that true? Isn't that what equanimity really is? So being in these really challenging interfaith dialogues, which is what you're bringing up, is our job. It's our job to be with people who really don't agree with us, don't you think?
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge. Maybe we should bring our big sticks to Interfaith Dialogue.
Perhaps. I wonder if dialogue is the wrong place to start, though.
Dialogue, people get so attached to words, and so it might be better just to, I've always found it so moving just to go into different places, like to walk in here, you feel the love. You don't have to understand the theory, you just feel the love. And so maybe just going into each other's places.
Once in Los Angeles, interfaith group, where all the spiritual leaders decided that we want to see all religion talking about love, loving humanity. Then the core of the core message is same. And then how they work. We talk superficially, I love you, you love me. And then we do our things, come back. Once I asked one imam, that Dr. Hatut he's a leader of Los Angeles. So I said, Dr. Hatut, you are saying such things. Can you talk to your congregation like that? I cannot. That's the problem. They cannot express those thoughts, though they believe in that high, as just message you talked about. They cannot express that. So this is the problem, and we cannot solve that problem unless we ourselves do our best as much as we can. And then they decided that we'll go to each place, and then we went to the Mormons in Utah. And when we went there as a team, Los Angeles interfaith team, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, or Muslim, all, and went to that place, really were overwhelmed at their headquarters. How they are worshipping, how their temple, they took us into because it is a special trip, So they took to those places where normally you cannot go. How much charitable activity they are doing all over the world. It is revelation. It is an eye-opener. So if we see that there is, through these religious movements, things are happening in silently. There are good people in the stream who are trying to maintain the vitality of the spirituality. But there will be odd forces always. Hinduism talks about three gunas, as Buddhism talks about tamas quality, rajas quality, and sattva quality. Clear quality of purity, love, joy, blessings. This is sattvika quality. Arrogance, ego, pride, ruling over others is the rajas quality. Tamas, dullness, unkindness, impolite, and bully. So those are the tamas quality. These three qualities will be in the society, but we have to raise sattvika quality more. So people like you, what you are doing, wonderful. Thank you all. You are all doing that wonderful job, so that this good quality comes out in the society, even in a humble way. I think what is the satisfaction? Many times question comes like that. What is the use of this interfaith? This is the history. It has opened up in 1893. This opened this channel of interfaith understanding and blessings to the world. We didn't face-to-face sit anytime. This is the only time it is happening. In all over US you find. Every place there is an interfaith group. They're trying. Good awareness is coming in the heart of good people in all religion, that we have to find the common ground of our stay. And that is the blessings, and we should encourage that more and more to understand each other. See, today's meeting, I thank you all. I understand much about, I went to Ahmadiyya group, I spoke there and they came to our temple. We have good friendship with them. But to know interpersonally how you live your life, how you transmit your message, how you feel, that gives a good connection. And we see that we are tuned in the same spirit there. What you talked about, the faith, the fear, that is not God. I don't want to go to that God who is fearful, sitting with a rod in hand and punishing, I go to hell. Why shall I go to that God? No, God is all love. Even we do 99 mistakes, God forgives. So these are the concept of making better person, better people. So thank you all.
One thing, just quick, one thing I have learned, and I do this with my kids and with my friends, and I will encourage all of you. There's no harm to express your feelings to your friends and your kids or anyone. I always tell my kids I love them, whether my son or daughter, and every time they're leaving, every time they're coming back to home, or I see them, even a good friends, I all tell them, listen, I love you. And people said, seriously? I say, yes, why not? And one time my wife asked, our son is 28 years old. He was leaving for New York, and at the airport, I gave him a hug and I said, I love you. And he said, I love you, Baba, which means dad. And my wife said, you never said that to me. He said, because you never said that to me too. So do that, if you have kids and parents, because you never know how long more they're going to be with you. The light switch can be off. I lost a brother 3 weeks ago. He was 58 years old in England, have a cardiac arrest. So if you love someone, don't wait. Do go and tell your kids or parents or friends, whoever, because you don't know how long you have or how long do they have. Thank you.
So before we conclude, I would like to express my gratitude on behalf of the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston. Thank you all for coming, and a very special thanks to all our speakers today. Thank you so much for your preparation and time.
Thank you.